These cycles are similar in terms of there's activities within a cycle, activities and functions. There's documents that you must know in this cycle, and also the risk and internal controls, plus the computerization of the cycle. Okay. Inventory is a major component of your cost of sales, your gross profit, your net profit. So it's a huge, not say huge, but it's an important line item, because you saying these are the goods that I am willing to manufacture or produce in order for me to make profit, or in order for me to monitor my costs, So that's why it's a material current asset, and it's in your balance sheet, and also it affects your. These are most of the information there in your textbook, and it's in your textbook whereby you will see documents that are used in different stages of your inventory. So this is the part where they're talking about inventory in your warehouse, and the documents that are used in there are as follows. So when you receive your goods, there's a goods receive note that you will have in the warehouse. There's a picking slip and delivery note that is involved in the warehouse. Picking your inventory, maybe dispatching it somewhere, or those are the documents that you can expect in there. And during production, this is another phase now. So there's a warehouse piece, and then there's the production piece, right? So under the production piece, this is when now we're talking about issuance of your material, schedules that needs to be there in terms of how your production is going to go, how do you manufacture. So there's schedules, and schedules normally introduce your labor to say that so-and-so in a factory setup, they will be working till this time, and then there's a second shift or a night shift, there's overtime. So all of those, you get them from your production schedule. And as a result of that, there are job cards involved. Job cards are related to your employees. Them taking in, taking out will help you with monitoring your labor hours, and also if they yield any productivity to your schedule, right? Because you will have set dates, set time for certain things to be done. But I'm saying this so that you can visualize, but these are the documents that are used in this cycle. So material requisition, that will be when you have to justify and also make a request to say that this is the material that I need. And issuance, as I've mentioned, when you issue your material to another process, that's what will happen there. And then schedules I've mentioned, job card I've mentioned, production report, a report to say that how many materials have been used, who worked where, for how long. And as a result, this is the stage that we are in terms of the production. And there's a costing schedule. Costing schedule, it will sum up everything, materials, labor, manufacturing overheads, you will have them there. And also transfer to finished goods note. That's when you are done with the whole process of just transferring from one to another. So I'm trying to make examples so that you can picture, but more or less, this is what are the documents that are used under production and documents under warehouse. Okay, so risk and internal controls in the cycle. Let's look at activity 3 and 4. Let's look at activity 3. So let me pose a question to you guys. Can you guys describe the internal controls that can be implemented to mitigate risk associated with physical transfer of inventory in a warehouse. So describe, remember guys, it's identify and explain. Can you identify internal controls that we can use to reduce the risk associated with transferring physical inventory within the warehouse? What controls do you think should be in place to address that risk? From damage, loss, the risk could be damage, loss, theft. What controls do you guys think a company should have within a warehouse to mitigate that risk? It's a question that I'm posing to you guys. What do you guys think? Remember, brainstorm and then you can formalize your answer. But what controls do you guys think should be present to reduce the risk of damage, loss, and theft when it comes to transferring physical inventory within a warehouse?
Okay, just to be just for clarity, the transfer, can it be at any stage within the warehouse, in other words, prior to the warehouse, and then from the warehouse to any place else in the factory?
Remember, transfer within the warehouse. In the warehouse, it could be just moving it from one point to the other, right? So hence I'm thinking that what do you guys think?
But is it fragile goods?
The controls that we can have to mitigate this risk of, because anything that results to taking a certain taking inventory from one spot to another, there might be damage, there might be theft. So let's say within the warehouse, maybe if I could make an example, moving it from production to dispatching now. We are taking it to the finished goods line. So in that instance, I'm moving it from one spot to another. And there might be damage to the goods. There might be loss. There might be theft because I'm moving it from one point to another. So what controls do you guys think should be in place in such an instance to avoid the things that I've mentioned?
If it's fragile goods, then it needs to be transported like safely without breakage and everything.
So how can we ensure that the fragile goods are taken care of?
Firstly, the goods should be wrapped appropriately with bubble wrapped and stuff. If it's a fragile good.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. And you would also tape it, right, to say that people could have a warning of saying that, you know how with glasses and stuff, it could be a thing of they put a warning tape to say that this is fragile goods so that people can hold it with care. Okay. What other controls do you think that should be in place to mitigate the risk of loss and theft when it comes to transferring physical inventory in the warehouse?
Okay, so the stolen goods and the theft, that is the risk identified. Then the internal control is there must be notes. For instance, if it goes from one department to the other department, let's say Department B is going to have a material request note sent to Department A. Then it will be packed and wrapped and however it should be. Then it will be moved from A to B. Then A issues a delivery note to B, but then there must also be perhaps your delivery note and a transfer note is exactly the same, to say that the goods were transferred in good order, and then signed at the end to say, but yes, it has been received in good order. and everything is there.
Yes.
So the quantities must be on there, and the itemized, a detailed schedule of all the goods sent and received.
Okay. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that because you try to think of all the necessary things that we would have to consider. You made an example in terms of Department A and B where these goods will be delivered, and that it's important that before anything moves, there is a request to show that this is what we need and how many do we need. And once that's being delivered, there should be another form of notification to say that after this being what we needed, did we receive what we wanted and is it in a good condition? So thanks for that. And also, guys, you must also remember that when it comes to controls, controls are either preventative, you know, what Naeem said in terms of putting a bubble wrap, having a tape to say this is fragile items or whatever. That could be of saying that I'm trying to prevent, I'm trying to make sure that things are in place to prevent damage or negligence from people just grabbing a box and then moving into the next door, piling boxes on top. By putting a bubble wrap and putting a sticker to say warning fragile item, people will know how to take care. So it's a preventative measure in a way. And then others are preventative and detective controls. So this is like just to test. Detective is you can be able to preempt in a way. It's to test if controls are in place, you know? So this is when you like reviewing or you're reconciling, you are testing. It's a control within a control. I hope it makes sense. So you are detecting if there are if the controls that you have are functioning well. That's why I could think of a review that after what Marika and Naeem suggested of these people must have a request, the other ones, what, there should be someone who comes and reviews that whole process. So it's a signature of on the good receipt notes or on the material requisition that there's a senior who comes and signs. You know, so always remember the review and always remember the internal control components when you're trying to think of, I mean, it's the control activities that we've covered at the very beginning of this control situation. That you must have somebody who's performing reviews, you know, so always remember that. So thanks for your contribution. The other one that I wanted us to look at is activity 4. Activity 4, production of inventory can only commence after the production manager has authorized the job cards, right? So now we're talking about the job cards, which were part of your production function of your inventory. So production of the inventory can only commence after the production manager has authorized the job cards. What details must the job card contain, and what procedures are performed by the manager before they authorize the job card? So what details would be on a job card, and also what procedures does a production manager perform before they authorize a job card? The question to you guys.
I think the job card is to record materials for special orders like inventory items, and then to follow these inventory items through the production of the whole process. and then to finalize it with the finished goods at the production end.
Okay, so those are the details. And what procedures does a production manager do prior to authorizing that job card?
So on my side, I would say that the performance report should be used to measure the performance of production. Like, for example, the quantity of goods produced or the damaged items.
But I'm asking you, yes, thanks for answering. I'm asking, what does a production manager need to do before he or she authorizes the job card? What is it that they need to perform?
To check.
Review.
Yes.
Review what?
Review the job card and the details pertaining to that and see if it corresponds to what.
Yes.
Corresponds to what? Guys, remember, you must give me full answers. What does the job card need to what does the job card need to agree to? So I understand the review part and I agree, but what are they reviewing against? Like, what are they comparing what to say that I'm comfortable, and then they can authorize that job card?
They check the customer order codes.
Okay.
If it corresponds.
Do tell, Tandeka, guys, you're giving me half answers. Okay, let's go to maybe once you see. So a job card sequenced, dated, contains a list of materials used. For example, the description and the quantities. It is cross-referenced to customer orders. And it is cross-referenced to material requisition and issue. And it is also cross-referenced to the production schedule. And after all of this, that's when they will authorize the job card. So I guess here it was more of, guys, you need to try to understand the whole cycle and where each document fits. So what I'm trying to say is that understand what that document is for, what is on that document, when is it used, and what can it be used against. So a job card, yes, states a list of materials that they need. You must always, if it has the materials that are needed to be used, that means that there was a requisition before they knew how much material is going to be needed. And you can always look it against the materials that have been issued, if any, and also the production schedule. So production schedule, as I've mentioned, it will have all the materials, it will have labor, it will have all the details that we need to have a proper understanding as to what goes into this whole production. And when you mention that a manager reviews, always mention as to what are they reviewing. And if you're saying they review the job card, what exactly on the job card to take us through the task or functions that they will perform before they sign that job card to show that they are satisfied. Let's move to inventory counts. Inventory count is stock counting. Sheet to floor, floor to sheet. So what I'm saying is that there should be a schedule or something that has all your inventory. You match it against what's on the floor. The floor is what's in your warehouse. You count to see that the number of inventory on your floor agrees to your schedule, your inventory schedule. If not, I mean, that's the one-way direction. The other direction is you look at the inventory on your floor space, which is your warehouse, and you try look for it into your schedule of inventory. So Depending on the direction, what you're trying to achieve is existence, to check that the certain items, let's say on your list, you're checking for existence if they are there on the floor. The other direction of saying that you are taking a sample of your inventory on the floor and you compare to what's on the schedule, you are trying to achieve completeness, to make sure that your list is complete. You're taking from, there's nothing omitted, so you look from the floor to the sheet. So that's that. And then there's accuracy, to say number of units that we have on hand, you know? So that's stock count. So what basic materials material, I've been speaking of materials the whole day, excuse me. Which basic principles must be adhered to before conducting actual inventory count in order to ensure that it's a successful count? So what should we consider before conducting an actual inventory count? What, have you guys ever performed a stock count? If not, maybe try to imagine a stock count, what it involves, and do tell me that even if it was your company, what is it that you would consider needs to happen or we need to know before we perform a stock count? It's more on the admin side as to what needs to be considered to ensure that the whole process of an inventory stock count is successful. Guys, think about it. Stock count. What should be considered? Anyone would like to try?
On the admin side, I would say that the inventory list must be printed early, before the sales team arrives or any dispatching team arrives or ordering stuff, or before any processing on the system occurs.
Yeah.
Because it must be at a point in time early in the morning before any activity happens.
I agree. Because any other material issuance or putting in more materials in the production or any movement to the inventory is going to affect your count. So it has to be at a point in time. So for you to do that, you need to communicate with your other departments as to, it's either it's a surprise or whatever, but it needs to be planned whereby those people who are involved, because it's different in many departments, they are aware that this is going to happen, so it doesn't affect the balance that you're looking at, right? I'm happy with that. And if we look at number 2, they say that you must list procedures that should be followed by the counting team when conducting an inventory count. So tell me, what are the procedures that you follow when you are performing an inventory count?
They must have an inventory tag, like put a tag on your items to identify it before they count, and inventory adjustment forms.
What about them?
They must have it also as well if they need to adjust according to the stock count that they have.
Other procedures?
When you have a team, it's usually a team of people, and then they must be divided into sections of your inventory to then actually count, I would say.
So when you're dividing them into 2, why would you divide them into 2?
Because the other one checks the other one, I would say. And then that if the one counts, let's say 10 items, and the other one counts 11 items, then it's just for auditing, checking purposes, I would say.
Okay, so for verification of the whole process to ensure that the process is accurate, complete, because you need to ensure yeah, like you're saying, it's almost like an auditing of making sure that the other team did count the correct stuff and they followed the right procedures. Okay. So hey, maybe if you can, Marika, can you please open this for us? And then while I talk about this so that we can look at these procedures, because trust me, they are very important that you know them. Okay. So in order for a successful count to happen, it needs to be proper and properly planned and prepared at the specific time, because inventory count must happen at a point in time. There must be stationary stationery needs to be there, and written count information and instruction for all members. So that's why I was saying that principles that I was mentioning, they are more on the admin side of things, that certain things needs to be in place before the stock count actually happens. Marika, do you have or anyone, Jackson and Stent, do you guys?
I have it open. I'm just looking for the correct page.
Okay, so they're saying 12 to 13. Sorry guys for the funny noises. Hey, you know, with spring, hey, my sinuses act up. Hey? Whether I'm outside or inside is just a problem.
Okay, I have it open.
Yes, please read it for us. This is for the procedures that you need to perform for an inventory stock count. Yes, Marika, over to you.
Okay, the count staff should be divided into teams of 2, with one member of the team being completely independent of all aspects of inventory. All teams should be given a floor plan of the warehouse, which should clearly demarcate, I hope that's correct, the inventory locations of which they are to be held accountable. All inventory should be counted twice. One of the following methods can be adopted. Must I do the sub-bullets as well, or can I just do the main bullets?
Main ones, please.
Okay. The next one is all items are, as items are counted, they should be neatly marked by the counters. Where count teams identify damaged inventory or inventory in an area of the warehouse which appears unused or excessively dusty, these inventory items must be marked as such on the inventory sheets. A few boxes should be selected at random in each section and the contents compared with the description on the label to confirm that the contents have not been changed or removed and the seal replaced. The count controller or assistant should walk through the warehouse once the count is completed and make sure all items have been marked twice. Examine the inventory sheet to make sure that first and second counts are the same and agree to the quantities recorded on the perpetual inventory if there is one. Instruct the count teams responsible for sections where discrepancies are identified. The next bullet is the count controller should obtain the numbers of the last goods receipt note, invoice delivery note, and goods returned note used up to the date of the inventory count. No dispatches of inventory should take place on the date of the inventory count. All inventory received after the count has begun should be stored separately in the receiving bay until the count is complete and must not be put into the warehouse. The counters responsible for the count sheets should draw lines through blank items on all inventory sheets and sign each count sheet and all alterations. The inventory controller should check that this procedure has been carried out and should sequence test the inventory sheet to ensure that all sheets are accounted for. Count count teams will only be formally dismissed once the count is complete and all queries have been attended to. That's it.
Thank you for that. It is a mouthful, but it's important for you to know because inventory cycle, guys, it's very small. Like now, we're done with inventory cycle. We're going to look at the payroll one. So it's very important that you know what a stock count actually entails and what are the procedures that you need to be aware of. And you know, sometimes inventory count, it doesn't even have to be like with the production itself, but some of the principles within an inventory count has to do with, for instance, when there's marking. You find that marking, you guys will mark almost the same paper and then you must come back and see if there's any differences between the two. You can't leave the marking center with irreconcilable marks where I would have said 50 and Tandeka would have said 55. We need to sit down and resolve those before we leave the marking center. And then we can't leave without all the scripts being counted to make sure that those are the ones that entered the premises. You know, so that there's no theft or damage or whatever. So I'm just making an example to say that it goes beyond just in the factory setup, but it also goes into a service-orientated type of thing. So I'm just saying that try to make sense out of the procedure so that you don't forget. Because if you cram, you will forget. Okay. So I want us to look at a question. Oh, thank you. I think I received it now. So let's look at a question that was asked. You see, like inventory could be just a portion, but you will see the marks. Inventory and production. Inventory is a significant account balance in the financial statements of Venco. They have numerous factories across the country where they produce furniture for their retail shops. The management is concerned about the condition of the warehouse where the completed furniture is stored. So this is a furniture shop, and the management is concerned about the condition of the warehouse where their completed stock, meaning the finished goods, are stored. That's all they said. So let's look at the question. It's about 7.5. The question is here to say that list 6. So when they say list, you must just list. Don't try explain, just it's listing. List the 6 physical controls that Venco should have implemented at their warehouse to lower the risk of theft, damage, and loss. So what are those physical controls that you should have in a warehouse for finished goods to avoid theft, damage, and loss? I'm asking you guys, what would you have in place to ensure that whatever finished goods that you have in that warehouse are protected? Because they're asking you to lower the risk, not to say that theft won't happen, but make it so hard that theft, damage, and loss doesn't happen.
Can I? I'm actually looking at the textbooks. Does it count?
Before the textbook answer, so if it counts, it will be a thing. Don't read it out, but just make sense of what you're saying. So what is that? What are those physical controls you would have in place to avoid theft or to reduce the risk of theft, damage, and loss?
Controlled exit and entry.
Yes, a control. And how would you, hence I'm saying, make it a bit practical? But you are correct. But I just want to know, what would you make How would you control your entry and exit?
Then tags that the employees must swipe to say, or so that there is a trail of who accessed the warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And others, how would you control your entry and exit? Because it doesn't mean that, yes, it's good to say that when your employees come in, they tag so that you know who's in and out. But your employees can still steal from you. Yes, you were saying?
I was actually just saying that limited staff must actually have, not all the employees, limited staff must have access to it.
Happiness? And how can you avoid that the limited people who got access don't steal from you?
Maybe we should have those machine by the door that they scan when they're going out. Maybe they detect if there is anything in their whatever body, whatever they're wearing. So you see those that make those noises, if there's something that they're carrying with.
Yeah, those detectors, yes. I once did a stock count at Simba Chips. They were making lace somewhere by Kempton Park on your way to the OR Tambo. And they were saying when I was inside the premises, especially inside where they make the lace, they said I could have as many chips as possible, but I can't live with a packet. So we used to get there, get fresh lace every day. We used to eat them to a point where I'm just like, I can't eat, because you get excited at the first time and then after you just like, it's fine. So what they did is that, yes, when you come in, there's a certain ID that gives you access. Not everyone had access to where it's being produced. If you are designated to that part of the factory, you will gain access. If not, no. Even if you are from the same company, you get in. But when you leave, like you said, there's those buzzers that checks. I can't live with a packet of chips, whether I've got a bag or what. But then they have that buzzer door so that they could see that I don't leave with a packet of chips. Because what could happen is that I could take them and start selling them, right? So that's how you control your entry and also your exit. Cool. What other controls are there in place? Yes, Marit. Oh, and then also surveillances, like you said. Sorry. Surveillances must be there at all times to monitor the movement in and outside the warehouse. Last one, they said 6. Sorry, they said 6. Hey, guys.
Yeah, I think we did only 4.
Yeah, so 6, guys. You need to get 6 out of 6. Because this is when you're trying to score as much as you can, eh?
I would the other one I would say is a secure building, that there mustn't be a lot of windows or doors specifically.
Mm-hmm. And the last one?
It's environmental. The area, it must be dry, neat, tidy, leak-proof when it rains.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So it should be maintained well. So guys, master those 6 ones. Know your physical controls. Know your inventory count. And know your documents as to material requisition, job card, what are those, what's on those documents, and you should be fine for this cycle. Any questions before I move on? But it's pretty much straightforward. It's straightforward because it's small, but know your documents, what's on those documents, how it needs to be done. What are the risks? The risks are generally that damage, loss, and theft. And inventory count, and also physical controls. Okay, cool. So we're getting to another cycle. We are almost there in terms of cycles, because after payroll, it is the finance and investment, which is also small. And after that, we just have to be doing past papers. That's when I will now be forcing you guys to sit down. Yes, you are sitting down now, but to sit under time pressure, because we haven't done anything related to time pressure to say that it's 6 multiplied by 1.2, how many minutes you need to spend on that question. So we now need to get to that habit of going back to your king, your acts, all the cycles. I'm timing you, you are writing it down. Once the time is up, you give me what you wrote, not what you think. Okay. So I need to get to that point. I need you guys to get to that point before you go write the exams. Okay. Payroll and personnel. So two main types of transactions that are processed within the cycles are your salaries and wages and your employee deductions, such as your taxes, UIF, medical aid, and pension funds. Okay. Those are the two main transactions within the cycle. The primary transactions and their impact on the financial statements is that on your balance sheet, it affects your bank and cash, because you pay people in cash, right, through your bank. And there's accounts payable for those employee deductions and benefits that you might have. Those are your accumulated leave, your unclaimed wages, your SARS, your pension funds liability, and medical aids, etc. So those are the two line items on your balance sheet, which the cycle affects. And then your income statement, your wages, your salaries, pay as you earn, and UIF, skills development levy, and so on. Okay, so as usual, let's go to activity 1. Oh, and then guys, look at the computerization of the cycle. Very important, don't forget it. So activity 1 says that you must explain why the payroll cycle could be especially susceptible to fraud. Why do you think that this line item, this cycle, payroll and personnel, is highly susceptible to fraud? It's a discussion. So why do you think that it attracts fraud? One of the major risks here is fraud. I'm listening. Guys, when it comes to salaries, wages, why do you think this is a situation where fraud is more likely to happen?
I'm just, at the moment, I'm brainstorming.
Yeah. Time will come where you're writing. Yes.
Isn't, can it be, for instance, where you say that the person is paying pension, but you don't pay the pension to the pension fund, but you actually pay it to yourself or to someone else?
Yeah. Yes. And another one. So you're looking at the employee benefits. And I know that maybe some of you don't watch. I normally watch this other show. I forgot the name. Oh, Skipper Files. Anyway, on that show, there was an instance, I'm just talking about the one that you mentioned, whereby I think it was either pension funds or some of the employee benefits, where the employees every single month on their salary statement, it indicates that, let's say pension fund, that they are busy deducting the pension fund out of their salaries. Then when now this person needed to retire, when they go and claim, the company says that no, they don't know what they're on about, and it was a whole hoo-ha. Only to find out that they were just taking money from their employees and not saving it elsewhere. They were literally, committed fraud and misused the funds. So it does happen. It does happen. Cool. Another reason why this cycle is susceptible to fraud,
besides the unauthorized amendments on employers' records, it can also be inaccurate or incomplete records.
What about the incomplete records?
Maybe they want, like they're not deducting the correct amount on clients or overcharge the clients and the employees. I can think of.
Okay. Okay. And what about ghost employees, guys? People putting people on the roll that don't even exist. So every single month there's a payment out only to find out that it's a ghost employee. That also happens, guys, where people either they pay themselves more than what they should be earning, or they introduce ghost employees where every single month there's a certain bank account that I've set up and I've created a ghost employee. So I'm getting 2 salaries instead of 1. Such things do happen. So that's why it attracts a lot of fraud, because it has to do with what people earn, right? And people's lifestyle depend on what they earn. So that's why with that happening, it's a sensitive thing. Okay, so they say companies who pay wages in cash are susceptible to fraud due to the high risk of theft of large cash amounts. So that one looked at wages itself, that wage normally it's cash, it's in an envelope. But I think that now with the banks having payment solutions, you can use these payment solution ideas like your e-wallet, instant money to pay your people. So it reduces the risk of handling large amount of cash. Because imagine on the day that you have to go pay your people wages, probably they know that you'd be going to such and such a bank to withdraw this amount of money, and you are driving this route to the factory where you will be paying your people, and you will be paying them at this certain time. That by just telling the information, you can see that at any point theft can happen before you make that payment. Okay. Describe the timekeeping, payroll preparation, and payout functions. And remember, describe means identify and explain. So identify and explain the timekeeping, payroll preparation, and payout functions relevant to a wage system. So what are those? Identify and explain to us the relevant functions that are within a wage system. Identify and explain to us what timekeeping within a wage system involves or entails.
Can I have a shot at timekeeping?
Yeah.
Timekeeping refers to a timesheet that is kept, or if there was overtime worked, that is the timekeeping. Now, how that is relevant, the relevance to the payroll cycle is at whether the payroll is done weekly or monthly, is you will need that timesheet to see what was the extra hours worked for overtime, or if employees are paid by the hour, you must be able to see what is the accurate amount of hours worked, so that you can work out what is that employee's remuneration due to him.
Yeah. I liked how you answered, and I totally agree. And then when it comes to payroll preparation,
can I have a shot again?
Yeah.
The payroll preparation, that is where all the calculation is done, where the remuneration is checked or amended by the timekeeping documents that was actually handed in, or any amendments. The UIF is checked, or if there's any bonuses that must be calculated, that is brought in. So there's everything that has to do with getting to the net amount of the payroll, of the final amount being paid out to the employees.
Perfect. And it will work well with your timekeeping, because if you are paying any overtime, or you are paying those salaries that you mentioned, or wages, it's wages now, where the calculation happens, for it to be accurate, it needs to be stemming. Sorry, it should have certain inputs from your timekeeping in order to ensure that it's accurate. So I'm happy with that. And the payout function, what does it entail, and how is it relevant to a wage system?
Okay, the payout function is basically the final stage of doing the payroll. It links with the payroll preparation. So the payout function is basically if you pay cash or if you pay via EFT. So then if you pay by cash, it is physically going to the bank, drawing the money, putting it in envelopes, or whatever procedure your company has. But then you must also just make sure that you calculate your risk of getting the cash, bringing it in, making sure that the money is counted correctly. You must have internal controls there to make sure that there's no theft or fraud on that side. With the EFTs, that is then where your computerized section comes in, where there must be two people releasing. The one person actually loads the payroll in the bank in time, though, and then there's other people that two releases then, two different ones, so that there's a proper sequence to check that it is the correct person that's being paid, the amount, the person loaded on your audit trail in your bank matches your net remuneration list as a backup received when you do the final payout.
Perfect. I totally agree. I like that. So you've mentioned the relevance of each function and what each of the function actually entails. And that's why I was saying that I like how you answered, because it just shows a deeper understanding of the cycle. So I would say that's how you should be able to articulate yourself when it comes to explaining the functions within a cycle. What does the function actually entail, and why is it relevant to the specific cycle that you're in? I hope that makes sense, guys. Try to get to understand that within a payroll, within a wage or salary system, what are my functions within the cycle, and what does each function actually entail? Why is it relevant to this cycle? Because it is through that you'll be able to then take it up a notch to say that what are the documents within this cycle and what would be on those documents and why do you use them. Then you go to a point of saying, what are my risks? What could go wrong in this cycle? And what are the controls that needs to be there? If you could do that with all the cycles, guys, you will see a difference in how you answer and also your speed of answering. So activity 2, and can you guys also just try to, as much as you might not be sure with your answers, I always say it's safer for you guys to test your knowledge within our mini group than for you to be alone in an exam and that's when you're trying to attend certain things. We'll already be late. Okay, so activity 2. The following documents or records are found in most businesses. Some are applicable to the payroll system and some are not. So now, they give you the documents, your cash receipt, payroll amendment, I'll go through them. The question is, state which of the above documents will be found within a payroll cycle, and state the order in which the documents would normally occur in a payroll cycle, indicating in which function the payroll will be used. Okay, so now I'm going to mention each of the documents, and I would like you to indicate if it is within the cycle or not. And then after I've highlighted the ones that you guys have identified as part of the cycle, you will give me the order in which they are normally used within the cycle and within which function. Okay. Is cash receipt part of the payroll cycle? Yes or no?
No.
What are others saying?
No.
Oh,
Okay.
No.
Payroll amendment? It's already
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Clock cards?
Yes.
yes,
Deduction tables?
Yes.
yes,
Employee contract?
Yes.
yes,
Unclaimed wages register?
Yes.
yes,
Pay slips?
Yes.
yes,
And then internal purchase order?
no,
Payroll wage? It is the payroll.
yes,
Purchase journal? No.
no,
So I've highlighted the ones, it was easy. I've highlighted them. So what is the order in which these documents normally occur within a payroll cycle? Which one do we start with first?
Employment.
the payment amendment form.
Ah.
Payroll amendment form.
What do we normally use the payroll amendment for, Tandek?
When we're about to pay the employees, we check if there is any amendment on their payouts on that month.
So how can we start with that because you see there's other, I'm saying how can you amend if you don't know the person first? You haven't awarded them with the contract. So I'd say you start with this one, Tandek. You understand?
Yeah. Oh yes.
You have to start with getting the person the
Contract.
contract first before you can amend, right? Okay. So after employment contract, what's next?
Payslip.
Okay. Others?
I would say that it's either the payroll amendment or the clock card. It's either they are very close to each other.
Clock card. I don't get why would they start with this. I beg to differ, but anyway. Another one? Unless if we find out what is the payment amendment form, because I don't get it. Why would they start
sometimes there are employees that are getting monthly bonuses, or those bonuses, maybe they are variables for 6 months or 12 months. So you check whether this employee still qualify for that bonus or incentive for that month, or it's out of the contract now. Maybe it's for 6 months, now it's for the 7 month. That means we're not paying that that employee that amount is from that month. It's any adjustment pertaining to the employee before.
Yes, and hence I'm saying, wouldn't an employee contract come first? Like, what are you amending to?
Maybe it's an amendment of the previous month. Unless they, say you short paid the employee last month.
Okay.
Maybe
okay.
Something like that.
Okay, but anyway, so okay, thanks guys for that. So, oh, here it is. Yeah, that's why I'm just like, okay, so I was looking at the wrong thing. My bad. But yeah, it's the employee contract, and then it's the payroll amendment form, as you guys mentioned, for any reasons as to why you would have to have a payroll amendment. Then you will have your clock card for timekeeping, and then you would have deduction tables, and then before a pay slip there might be a unclaimed wage register, because it will help you with preparing and paying out your pay. And there will be a pay slip, and then there's payroll journal. Okay. Now we get to the exciting part. Let's look at activity 3 and 4. Okay. Let's look at activity 4, because I'm looking at time. And then after looking at activity 4, we will look at one of the questions for payroll. So let's look at activity 4. It's a bit of a, we really have to go through it. So it will push our time. And then I'll try to make sure that by 1:15, we look at one of the questions. Okay. Or even at 1, but I'll try. Okay, so please try to listen, because it is it's a big question. So Cement Limited manufactures cement blocks and pavers. The company was started some years ago and has grown steadily to an extent that it currently employs 120 semi-skilled workers. Background of the company. Internal controls have not kept up with the growth of the business. You have been asked to evaluate the current wage system, and you've obtained the following information. Before I read the information, so we know that this is a cement company and it started to grow. So with growing, normally that's what happens. You focus more on meeting deadlines, just being part of that growth without considering the internal controls. So it is a bit concerning that it did grow, but it was not growing with the internal controls to match and reconcile, right? Because growth means that there's new additional information over and above what you are used to. So after saying that, you take a step back to say that this means that there is an existing internal control system. So chances are I would be asked to either identify the risks within the system, or I might be asked to identify the weaknesses, like the loopholes within the system, And thirdly, I might be asked to recommend, after identifying and give them my concerns, I might be asked to give recommendation as to what is it then they have to do in order to make sure that their controls are intact and they are able to reduce the risk that you identified. And over and above everything that I said, this the fourth way that they could ask me is to identify what's still going okay, what's still sufficient, and what are my reasons for that. Okay. These are normally questions that you find in your exam. So, first one, I'm going to read one and try to go to the required. Or let me read the required first. The required says, I must identify and I must explain the weaknesses. So you see, it was number 2, but it's part of the 4 ways that this question could be asked. So now they're asking you, identify the weakness and give us the reasons as to why you're saying that it's a weakness. Number 1, the manufacturing yard is enclosed by a large security wall. The only access to the yard is through the gate used by vehicles and delivery and by vehicles that deliver raw materials and collect finished goods. Workers enter and exit through this gate. There is a small gate hut manned by a security guard. So there's a yard. It's got large security wall. Only access is through the gate. This gate is used by vehicles that deliver goods and that take finished goods. Workers enter through this gate. But then there's a small gate hut manned by a security guard. So from what I've said, what's the weakness that you identify and explain to us why you think it's a weakness. I'm listening, guys.
And the workers doesn't clock in so that you can determine at the gate who they are and what time that they clock in.
I'm happy with that. So how can we summarize that? What is the weakness in that? Lack of, or like you have to start to say there is lack of something and then you give us your reason. So you gave me the reason. I just want you to give me an identification of that weakness. So what is that weakness? I hope I'm making sense.
Yes, you make sense. I'm just confused. If you look at the specific cycle, the payroll and personnel cycle, it should be with regards to to determine how many hours they worked as to just the security of the company. So I presume it's the clock card. They don't have specific, I don't know, sorry.
Are you right? You're on the right track. So do talk. I'm listening.
Okay.
You don't have the right word.
So what was the question?
What weakness do you identify?
Weakness. Okay. So I presume the weakness will be
you're on the right track.
I would presume it will be playing the payroll to determine the wages. There's no system in place for the payroll clock to determine how many hours they worked.
So there is lack of clock cards to determine the hours worked by the workers.
Yes.
And the reason why you're saying this is because
so the lack is the clock card, and the weakness will be then to determine the working hours, to determine the pay that must be paid to each one.
So I'm asking you, what did you see to say that, you know what, here there are no clock cards? What from the information that you were given, what indicated you to say that here there is no clock cards? They can't determine their accurate hours worked. What indicator did you see from there?
On arriving at or leaving work, employees tick off their name on a
Pardon?
daily time. Says on number 2.
Say that.
On arriving at or leaving work, employees tick off their names on a daily time list.
Can you please repeat that, Naeem? Sorry.
Number 2, it states, on arriving at or leaving work, employees tick off their names on a daily time list.
Mm-hmm.
Entering their time of arrival or departure in the space provided.
Okay. Yeah, so are you saying that's why? You're saying that that's an indicator for you?
Yes.
Okay. And also the whole thing of saying that, what about the gate? Like, the gate is used for vehicles, guys. So it could be that once a vehicle comes in, it's just a bunch of workers going in with the vehicle, if you get what I mean, just following. It's not a gate which allows one person at a time, if you get what I mean, right? I hope that makes sense. But thanks for your answers. So point 1 and 2, as Naeem has combined them, controls over timekeeping are inadequate. So do you guys see why I was forcing Madeleine to say that try to identify what's lacking or what they summarize it, and she did it nicely to say that there is lack of clock cards to it has to do with timekeeping. So you can always, I think, not always, but try to say that your weaknesses are normally linked to your functions within the cycle. So we know that within the cycle, there's timekeeping, there's payroll preparation, there's payouts, there's personnel, all those functions that we mentioned at the beginning. And you will have to identify that the weaknesses that you're seeing, where are they? Which function do they fall under? And once you've said that, you can say inadequate or there is lack of, if you guys get what I mean. I'm saying the language in terms of how you answer. So if they've asked you to identify the weakness, because we are very easy to give explanations without answering the question, which was identify first and then explain. Or they could have said describe the weaknesses within the system. So start by identifying the weakness. Controls over timekeeping are inadequate. Full stop. Then that's when you elaborate by going into the explanations. There's no reliable timekeeping mechanisms, making it impossible to prevent invalid hours. So here, there's another thing that I want us to be aware of, is that when they mention why you're saying that there's inadequate timekeeping, they mention the issue, and if you could see, they also mention the risk. I hope you guys are following what I'm saying.
Yes.
So the issue that we have is that there's no reliable timekeeping mechanism. So you have to ask yourself, okay, so what? This makes it impossible to prevent invalid working hours being clocked. The other one, workers record their own times of arrival and departure. So what? This could lead to fictitious hours. As the entry and exit take place through a generally used gate and are unsupervised, workers can again create fictitious hours. So I'm trying to say that when they are giving an explanation, they tell the issue given the information given, but they push it a bit step further by going straight to also saying this could lead to what. They're answering the so what portion. Okay, I hope I'm making sense. So let's look at number 3 and 3.2 to 3.3. Let's combine those two. So with what I've mentioned, can we try answer 3.2 and 3.3 from what you've seen as to identifying what the weakness is and your explanation, giving your indicator of what you saw from the information that's lacking and telling us what could it lead to. That's how you get your full mark. So let me read 3 and then we go to 3.2 and 3.3. The company's admin functions, such as sales and accounting, are located in a small block next to the manufacturing yard. The accounting section is staffed by a senior accountant, Zep Matabani, and 3 clerical assistants. One of the clerical assistants, Millie Morse, is responsible for the wage function, and it operates as follows. Okay, and remember, when they give you names, they don't just type for the sake of it. You would need to probably make reference to the names that you were given and what their title, what do they do. I'm giving you an indicator. Cool. So let's read 3.2. The wage week runs from Thursday morning to Wednesday afternoon. On Thursday mornings, Millie Morse calculates the total hours worked by each employee for the week, both normal and overtime, and enters the total amount against each employee's name on a weekly hours summary list. She then accesses the wage application on her computer and selects the Enter Hours module. She then captures these hours for each employee, entering the employee staff number and the hours worked from the weekly hours summary list. Once each employee's hours worked have been entered, Millie Morse selects the Prepare Payroll module to start processing the wages and producing the payroll. The payroll reflects on the employee's number, name, section, gross wage, deduction, and net pay. It also has a space in which the employee signs on receiving his or hers. So it has space in which the employee signs on his receiving or her pay of the pay. So I hope that makes sense. Let me just read 1. Each working day after closure of the business, she collects the daily time list from the gate pad and replaces with a new list for the following day. The completed daily list are filed in a date order in the lever arch file. She also maintains a simple hard copy for each employee. Then thereafter, weekly run from Thursday to Wednesday is the payroll run. And on Thursday morning, Millie calculates the total hours worked by each employee for the week, both normal and overtime, and enters their total against the weekly hours summary list. And then goes on to the system and puts in the employee staff number and the hours that they worked according to the hour summary list, and then prepares payroll module. And once she has started that, the employee can then sign on their behalf that they have received the pay. So what weakness do you identify in this, and why do you say so?
I think there should be, after she calculated everybody's wages. Okay, I start off incorrect, but I think there's a
Start by brainstorming and then we'll formalize. Yes.
Okay, separation of duties where somebody checks her before she lets the employee sign for his amount owed to him.
Okay, so let's stick to that one. So what weakness do you identify?
A weakness of separation of or internal control where somebody else double checks her. Separation of duties.
So let's say there is lack of
control over final payments.
Yes, lack of controls over final payments. That's a weakness. And you're saying the reason why you're saying this is because no one reviews the payouts before the employee acknowledges the payment receipt, right?
Yes.
And what could this lead to?
After she makes the summary of the weekly hours worked, she isn't being double checked by her superior to check that it's correct. It looks as if the employee signs and then they receive the pay. There's no double check if she did her calculations correct.
Yes, and I'm saying that by the fact that we identified the fact that there's no one checking, what could this lead to? What is the risk of not having someone who checks your work?
Like she can instigate ghost employees. She can make double payments by just a normal mistake. Because it's 120 employees, she can easily make a mistake every single week. She can maybe copy and paste, and then there's also double payments. Or if somebody don't get their pay, they will query it. But if they get more pay than they should, they won't query that. And the company will.
Yes, that's a good one, eh? That people won't query you. Yeah, like
it's normal.
It is normal. Like you wouldn't say, "Hey guys, you paid me more."
Yes.
You know. Yeah. So I like that. But do you see how you should be answering? Like the questions that I'm asking you guys, I'm not being smart.
Yeah.
Those are the questions that you should be asking yourself to say, okay, and then I've mentioned this, but then what?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So there is no separate personnel function to ensure this. Okay, here it is. It says that controls over the calculations of hours and entry are inadequate. This may result in errors in the amount paid. Okay. Nobody checks and authorizes these calculations of the hours worked per time list, and mistakes could therefore go unnoticed. The supervisor do not confirm the overtime hours that they are valid. There's no batching system of any kind seen to be used to enhance the accuracy and completeness of what's being entered into the computer. There is no review by an independent employee to verify the correct hours and wage rates have been used. So those are the things. What's important here is that you remember I was saying that they don't just give you people's names for the sake of it. They don't give you documents for the sake of it. So try to make sure that when you are answering, make an application to what's been given here, what you've been provided. You have to mention things such as the time list, milli. Do you guys get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Supervisors. Zeb is the supervisor. Yeah, that's a what? Yeah, so try to use some of the, I'm not saying rewrite, don't rewrite, but try to make it applicable to show that you are joining what you've read from that Jan's textbook and mix it, apply it, not mix it, but apply it to what you've been provided from your question paper. Okay. Yes. I hope it makes sense what I'm saying, guys.
Yes.
That's how you get your full marks. That's how you get your full marks. And as you can see here, payroll and personnel, it's about 25 marks. That's a lot of marks, eh? 25, it's a lot. So let's go to the question that speaks of payroll, payroll and personnel. And look, it's just this small thing, but it's about 25 marks. So know your payroll, know how to apply, know how to answer your question. So let's, as I promised, is about Kora plus 1. So let's look at one of the questions, because 25 marks, it is 1.2. It's about 30 minutes, eh? The question, you have to do it for 30 minutes, but we will look at one of the question that requires only like 12 minutes. Or we'll just go in between because it's just informal. FENCO makes use of a computerized accounting system when calculating their wages. All the data is accessible from the various factories via an internet connection. Each factory person can access the data to verify the hours worked, as well as to update the employee's master file. Ms. Emicha obtained a screenshot of the password settings currently in use at the factories. So this is a screenshot of what she obtained in terms of their password settings. Account and password settings, FENCO factory software. These are part of the settings detail and force password history. Setting 1 password remembered. Maximum password age, it's 6 months. Minimum password length, it's 4 characters. Password must be complex, it's being disabled. Store password using encryption, it's being disabled. Account logout threshold, it's after 10 unsuccessful attempts. Users must change password at first log on, it has been disabled. Show characters when typing password has been enabled. Allow same password of different usernames enabled. Automatically log failed login attempts has been disabled. Okay, so let's go to the question. Describe. Remember I said describe it, identify, and explain. Describe the controls that should be implemented when updating the employee's master file. And they say you must limit your answer to updating existing employee data. This is literally you giving us theory. It's 10 marks. Why am I saying you must give us theory? Because you were not given much context from what we read, right? You were just given context by the fact that the 4 men, they've got access to update the employee's master file. So now they're asking you, identify and explain controls that needs to be implemented regarding existing employees when it comes to updating their employees' master file. So what are those controls over a master file of an existing employee? It's the screen dump. Remember, it's only around passwords.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying that this question for 10 marks, them asking you, give us controls over an employee master file data and explain why that control is needed or what is it trying to achieve. And they say 10 marks. That's literally almost saying, give us a theory dump. Because as I've mentioned, there isn't anything that you can apply to here.
So can I go?
Yes, you may, Naive.
The employee master file should have a copy of ID, a copy of the employee's photo.
When updating their master file, right? Cool. What else, guys?
It should have a copy of the employee's job description, contract of employee also.
Okay. To do what with it? Remember, you must give me why are those things necessary, Naive? You are identifying the controls, but why are they necessary, those documents that you're mentioning?
In case there's a something, in case of emergency or something, then we have employees' details.
Okay, but remember here it's about updating a master file. Maybe we could start by saying what's in that master file? And why would someone want to update a master file? It's open to the class, guys and ladies.
Without the master file, you can't do a proper payroll count and personnel count. So your master file is the crux of the company, where you have to, on a, I don't know, monthly, weekly, maybe monthly basis, just check that every employee is there with the ID and photos and everything, to ensure there is no ghost payments or double payments made.
Okay, so when you are amending a master file with the data that you've mentioned that's inside, why is it important that you have those people's ID and?
So that to ensure they are not fictitious employees, they are actually definitely working at that company.
I'm happy with that. Okay, so now we are waiting for 10 marks.
That's why I've only received 51% for my assignment. Just to check also on the each employee with their contract, that they are allowed to work a certain amount of hours,
yes.
And that when you do the payroll, that it's in line with their work agreement or their work contract.
Yes, so that we can also be able to see if this is an overtime or what is it. Because for me to see that it's overtime, that means that there's a set hours that I need to work according to my employee's contract, right?
Yes.
Happiness. Others, guys, we are working for 10 marks.
So this master file also contains the each employee's banking details. So you must also make sure that each employee is being paid into the correct banking according to what they've given you. But that's still, and you don't use your own banking details to pay a fictitious person.
Mm-hmm. I'm happy with that. Okay, so I will leave it at that now, because I want us to touch the last question, and we've got like around 9 minutes. Where is it? Okay. So excuse me. Excuse me. I will look at the solution as fine another time. But yeah, you're on the right track, guys. Okay, cool. Where was I? Cool. So the next question. So you see how you must answer. You must just make sure that even if you mention documents, tell them why are they needed. Or if you feel like you're being a bit lost, try to find out what is a master file and what information is in there and what could go wrong if there are no controls. Then you start mentioning the controls that are there and try to say, what will they be trying to achieve? Okay. Or lower, what risk are they trying to reduce? Cool. Now, number 2, it says that identify 10 guys, weaknesses in FENCO's account and password settings procedures when considering the screenshot that you guys saw. So it says identify 10. It didn't say explain. It says 10. Just give us 10 weaknesses. It's another theory dump in a way, but you must make it applicable to what you're seeing here. So I'm not saying it's not a theory dump per se, because you have to apply it to this. So what weaknesses can you identify from here? And give me 10.
The one that says allow the same password for different usernames should I say, a lack of control, because anyone can then enter into anyone's username and use the same password, and anyone can go into that specific account and do whatever they want to. And also the show characters when typing passwords. Somebody can stand behind you and see exactly what is your password. When you leave the office, they can go into the screen and they can do maybe increase the amount to be paid to themselves.
Correct.
I can maybe add as well the attempts when you're logging in. So maybe they can try and reduce that, because it gives that person who wants to do maybe the fraudulent thing on this on employee's account many attempts. It gives him or her a chance to get it the correct, maybe the guessing correct password.
Yeah, so you're increasing the chances of someone getting the password correct after 10 unsuccessful attempts, right? Happiness with that. Another weakness?
The minimum password length is way too short and too easy to remember if you see it.
I like that. You see, you identified the weakness and you mentioned why. Another one? You guys are improving, eh? I hope you can hear yourselves that as you answer, the more you practice answering, the more you are answering the question. No longer a brainstorming answer, but you are being direct. So I'm liking that. You're improving. I like that. Another one, guys. Identify the weakness for us.
This is not a weakness, but the fact that the user must change password at first log on, that is disabled, is okay, because you don't need to change your password every single time you log on to the computer. But that should have been set by a setting of every third time maybe, but it shouldn't be disabled or enabled. Yeah.
All right.
It shows the characters when typing password enabled. I think that should be disabled.
Okay. And why do you think so, Naeem?
Because you never know if somebody is checking your computer or something, and then password is
correct. And then another last one, guys.
password must meet complexity requirements is disabled. I think it should be enabled because there must be, the password must be complex for only yourself to remember and not anyone else.
Yes. Okay. Happiness. So I'm happy with the answers. So some of the answers that were provided is that only one password is remembered by the system. Users can therefore reuse old password much sooner. Maximum password age is set to 6 months. Users only have to change their passwords twice a year. Okay. Minimum password length is set to be 4. This results in weak passwords, which can easily be guessed. Password complexity is disabled. Users therefore do not need to ensure that the password consists of a mix of letters, numbers, upper or lower case and symbols. Store password using encryption is disabled. Passwords can be readable when the file containing the password is open, therefore it can be changed. Users to change password at first login is disabled. This means that users are allowed to continue using the default password, which can normally be guessed. Oh, so this is an instance where maybe let's say you create something like a profile. Normally you are given a default password. You will then need to go in and then type a new password that is according to the password controls, if you get what I mean, guys. So that's what they meant by the first login. Your first login, you need to be prompted to change your password. You'll be using a default password. So summary of this question was seeing the importance of password controls and identifying their weaknesses. You mention them, you identify them. So by just stating what you saw and then you then tell them the risk. You remember I told you that when you speak of weakness, you always lead to what could go wrong. You must always ask yourself, so what? I've mentioned this, okay, and then, so for you to get that 1.5 mark, you need to then say that it could lead to what? So what could go wrong? So I would say that let's, we did inventory, we did payroll. Go back, do practice. As I was saying last week, you mark yourself the ones that you got in green, then you're fine. The one that are amber, that means that you were amber or yellow, you decide which color, but it will be related to a fact that you didn't hit the nail, but you were almost there. So when that is the case, that means that sometimes it's you didn't answer the question or you didn't answer the question fully. Like you see how you give me something and I'll say, and then what? So try to answer the so what part. That will then make sure that you get full marks. And the ones that you didn't get at all, where it's red, you go back to the theory, to that textbook of yours, and you read. You get what documents are there, what functions are there, what controls are there. You start doing that. And I'm telling you with time, as I'm saying that, I could see the progress in how you guys answer, that you are now getting into the gist of answering auditing questions. So yeah, that's that, guys. Thank you for attending and thank you so much for your participation. I truly appreciate it. So we'll meet again next week.